In this video we're going to take a look at subdivision modelling inside of Gravity Sketch. We would use this kind of spaceship. This is called a UFO, it's from a very old TV show, but what I want to show you is the utter basics of how you would start a subdivision modelling project or modelling session. And we're going to look at the utter basics from a cube all the way up to the more complex ways to edit the points, the edges and the faces. For this video we want to start looking at the utter basics of subdivision modelling. So we're going to use this UFO interceptor that we built for a project recently because it's got a good combination of subdivision modelling. So let's have a look at that. So you can see that this is a subdivision modelling or basically a polygonal model that can be subdivided, and it's got a lot of other things like the CAD based parts in there which we're not going to focus on at all. So it's a good one where we can just literally focus on these polygons and how we would manipulate these and use some of the polygonal features. So first of all, before we do that, I'll keep this in the frame, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through the most basic settings within subdivision modelling. So subdivision modelling, as a lot of you will know, is a way to subdivide a mesh. You keep the low poly cage, so it's really just showing you a graphical representation of what the model would be like if it was smooth. And by smooth, what we mean is each quad or each polygon gets times by 4 and then smoothed or rounded to a certain point. So let's just show a basic example of that to be really clear what we're doing. So to get a cube, for example, we hit our purple button on our non-dominant hand. Bear in mind I'm left-handed, so this might be reversed for you if you're right-handed, but it doesn't matter. So non-dominant hand or non-drawing hand, primitive shapes. And if you click in there, you can see this button up here. It says Subdivision Object Beta. Make sure that that's turned on. So that's that. If you don't turn that on, you'll be getting the normal objects that you would find in Gravity Sketch. So keep that on, and then it gives you a couple of options. You've got a torus, obviously you've got a cube, you've got a plane, you've got a sphere, and you've got a cylinder. All of them can be used in the way that I'm going to show you now. Now before you do that, let's just say we go back out and hit the blue button, and we'll make sure we've got our mirror on so you can see our central line. So we're going to do it across a mirror because that will matter, and I think that'll be enough for now. We'll just keep the mirror on and we'll have a look at what happens. So back to, let's zoom out a little bit so you can see, back to primitive shapes, subdivision object is on, and we'll just take the cube and we'll just drop one in the scene. It might be scaled up, so use your grips, to both grips, one on each hand, to bring them to the scale that you want for the scene you're using, and move them around. Because it's on a mirror, I'm going to have one on each side. So how do we know if that's a subdivision modelling object or just a normal parametric cube? Okay, so place it near the centre line, and holding it with your grip on your drawing hand, hit the blue button, and you can see these options. Now if you want to keep these out, we'll rip them off and we'll pop them in the air in front of us there. So these are all the things we're going to look at. So we know it's a subdivision object because you can see the points now. If you see an X, Y and Z, in fact I'll show you what it would look like if it wasn't working. We'll turn it off and we'll just get a cube again, make sure it's the same size. You'll see the difference now. If I hit the blue button on this one, you simply get this. And this is the normal parametric cube that you'll find. You can just edit the scale on all three axes, X, Y and Z. Now the panel has changed, so that's quite interesting because you could make that into a subdivision object if you wanted to, and you could have it mirrored, but it's much easier just to start with it this way. So let's take the cube, hit the blue button as we were, and we're now, in fact I'll position it a bit higher so the ship is out of our way a little bit, and I'm going to make it a lot, let me think what would be a good colour, something that's very different than the background. So we'll make it just a blue so you can see it a lot clearer. Okay, blue button, and now we've got this. So with our panel out, we can have a look at this. So first one, restrict face movement. So if you hit that, it simply restricts your faces. So you might want to just make something like this. By firing, it just fires out. like so. So if you just want to build some basic shapes, that can be quite useful. It's very similar in a lot of other programs. It used to be called Smooth Shift in some programs, and you can find it in ZBrush, in the Z Modeler as a basic tool. So that's quite a useful basic tool to start with. You've got auto select loops. So this is one, it's a bit more complex than the first one we just showed. But should I put a split through a model, so I'll just clicking with my dominant hand, I'm just using the trigger and I'm adding loops all the way around the model. Now as I change that, so I'm now using the grip and I'm moving each individual point, or I'm hovering over an edge and I'm moving the edges, or I'm hovering over a face. Now what happens if I've got quite a lot like this and I want to move, for example, let's put 2 more splits in, I want to move all of this one. So I have to go in and move it manually like that. So that can be a little bit of a pain. So what they give you here is this button, Auto Select Loops, and it's the black button on here. And you'll see what happens. You basically get that loop selected, and by holding down the black button and then holding with your grip, you can move that entire edge loop. So you'll see what I mean. Again, black button, grip, and you can move that loop. So when you're doing, I do a lot more organic work, and that's quite useful. So we can just move, like if you're doing an eye or something like that, it would be all the way around that. You can move it all the way around. Let me show you about the mirroring. So let's go and turn both of those off. We're going to hover the grip grabber there, and we're going to hit the red button, which is delete. So we're just going to delete all those faces from the center. As you can see now, there's nothing in the center. And then you could literally just bring these together and snap them like that. So if you're ever faced with an open edge and you want to do that, you can literally do it vertice by vertice, and that will bring it together. Or you can just literally grab them all and bring them together and see how it snaps. Now what you're probably best doing is doing that before you start. These central faces are deleted at that point. So it would be probably much more advisable to do it when it's just in the early cube stage. Now it's a bit messy here and it needs tidying up a little bit. So how do we smooth it down? I'll put another split there and another split there. So as you can see, it's very untidy. You could just go to your first subdivision level test and go on, and then subdivision level 1. You can see that smooths it a bit, but we've made it quite erratic with the points, and you wouldn't want to do it like that. So we'll turn that back off. And if you use the grabber, push forward with your thumbstick, cover over the points that you want to smooth as we're going to, and then holding down your grip, so that's smooth over the points that I want, hover over the points that I want, so I can pick them up basically, and now just pull back with the thumbstick. And you can see what's happening. Wherever I'm hovering over gets tightened or smoothed, or in some programs that would be called average vertices. So that's quite useful as well. So now in fact we'll do it on this seam. Be careful when you get to the seam, because you can do a bit of damage across the seam. I've steered well clear of it, so it shouldn't be a big problem for us here. So what you can do there is you can then test your subdivision, and as you see, that's worked out a lot tighter and a lot smoother. Now if I want to move a group of these, you can see here, if I'm flicking with my thumbstick to make sure I'm on point mode, I could just pull out single vertice like this. So if I wanted to change this front a little bit, I could just pull out one by one, but it's again quite erratic, so we probably don't want to do that. What we want to do is have an area of effect to pull it out. So how do we do that? So if you hover away from the model and then hold your grip and push forward and backwards, you get this ball within a ball, this sphere within a sphere. So if you have it all the way down, that now gives you a fall off. And as you can see, that's now falling off as it gets to the edge from one sphere to another. So that would mean I can now move it, and it makes it much more like a sculptural tool. So that's a really good one to explore. I'm going to do it again because it takes a minute to understand it. Sometimes you're doing it when you're on the model. So you're off the model, make your sphere quite large, hold your grip, and then push up and down. So all the way out would be no fall off, half fall off, all the fall off. And that's a great way to adjust your model. And what I really like is I can pull it and pull down on the thumbstick, and that smooths it. So I'm getting the ability to pull and smooth all at the same time. So if you're making something organic, again, this is really, really useful to you. So that's got some of the basics done. I'm deleting that now, and I'm going to have a look at some parts of this ship. So let's take this for an example here. Again, you could add splits, that works well, and you can tighten it, as we already know. But there might be times when you want to do a number of other things. So one thing we might want to do is extrude a panel. So if we wanted to extrude this panel, we could just grab it and just extrude in. Well, that works to some degree, but we've got this rounded effect. So with subdivision modeling, if you want that to be a more square, then you have to add edge loops to protect it. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I'm going to do an edge loop here, an edge loop here. This is very, very common for anyone who is a modeler by trade. This is one of the first things you learn, is how to make an edge like this. So I've basically put a rim all the way around it now, a protective layer. The negative side of that is, because of the way I've done it, it's gone all the way out through the mesh. So that's one of the mistakes that beginners always make, is we generally put too many loops in. It's okay when you're starting, it's okay when you've got a low poly model, but you need to be very, very careful about that, and you have to do what's called terminating it, which I'll show you in a moment. So now we've done that, when you do it, it still looks rounded. So it's worked to some degree, but look here, we need more here, 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 and that does it all. So there you go. That will be how you do a panel insertion. If you did the panel at the back now, you could go even further and carry in, but that hasn't got all of those edges. But it's a good technique to know, but you must be very careful because of all of this damage that goes all the way through. And we definitely don't want that. You'll get what's called like a wobble in the mesh. You'll see it already there. It started because we've got point after point, you know, close together here, not close together there. That's not so useful. So when I'm doing organic modeling with Gravity Sketch, what I tend to do is a slightly different thing, which is to terminate those edge loops. You can use this tool, which I'm about to show you. So if you now click the tool button on here, you'll get this panel coming out. And there's two things I want to show you on here. I don't use smooth at all, because I use the method I showed you earlier on. That's basically hover over something and smooth. So get rid of that one. And I don't use merge for anything in this kind of project. But what I do use is the cut tool, and I use the crease tool. So I'll bring both of them out and remove this panel. I removed everything, and so that didn't help. So let's just go back in, and we'll just bring that over there so it's out of my way. Let's just do the first one. We'll do the crease tool first. So what the crease tool does is we can work on, say, this bit instead. This one here. Keep losing it. And if I wanted to have a hard creased edge here, again, I don't use this that much with polygonal modeling, but it is used quite a lot in the industry. So you hover over and highlight the edges you want to crease. You must bear in mind, and the reason I don't use this is that when you export it, this won't come out with your model. There you can see a nice crease. Now you'll use that on car paneling, you'll use it on aircrafts, boats. It's very, very common in CAD-based modeling. It's not so common in polygonal or subdivision modeling, mainly because we would put another loop around that area to make that crease rather than relying on the crease function. It can look really nice for concept stuff, like, and you probably wouldn't on this ship, but it you know, it does. You might want just to have, for example, on here, you might just want the creasing to be done just along here, for example, along the front edge of the wing. Just highlight the ones that I want, and we'll have a look what that looks like. There you go. So it can be useful, and again, if you want to do where these indents are, this could be another good example, is you could put them in here. So like these tight corners here, I've added loops by mistake then. These tight corners here, you might want to say, let's just say add a crease there and there and there. All the way in there, and you can see that can add some nice detailing to the corners. So that's something, that's a personal choice, and your style of modelling and your industry that you're in will determine whether you use the crease feature a lot. And the other one is this one here, which is we'll use this up here, and we'll go to the cut tool, and the cut tool can allow you to cut across like so. So say you wanted to start turning the geometry and you wanted it to be in a different direction, you could start filling it in this way. So we could say that the geometry needs to go, just trying to think of a good example. I wouldn't probably want it in here, but let's say from the top here down to here, sorry, keep missing it, down to here. And then we might want to do, I might want to remove that panel, and then even remove that one, and that's given us a triangle there. Now if we wanted to get a very different shape, we've changed the direction of the geometry there. So we would probably now fill that back in this way by extruding out and snapping back to the model. And what that gives me is a turn. So this now is turned. So this geometry now is coming down here, and you'll see if I do the next extrude, it might be better if I turn subdivision modeling off and we just go back all the way to just plane. Now you can see it a bit better. And that's how we turn geometry into a new direction. So you can see this edge loop now would flow this way. Again, not the best example for the location on this model for me to do it, but a good example of what that tool actually does. And as you bring it around here, you might want to go back and use the cut tool again. Bring it out, and you might want to say cut here to here, and then remove this one. And again, you're now changing the direction of your geometry. What you're seeing me do there is to extrude. I'm just using the trigger. Now instead of letting go, I could just go like this, and I can just snap it in, or I could just do it point by point and snap it in. Now again, I freely admit that isn't the best area to do it on, but when I do things like faces and characters, being able to turn that geometry is a very useful tool, and I think that's something that I would expect that Gravity Sketch will improve and enhance as time goes on. So that covers all of those tools. So let's have a look at, let's move towards the back of it here. And as you saw there, you saw me using an extrude tool quite a lot. Now the extrude tool could be, you can extrude a number of things. You can extrude a face or an edge. So let's just take the face. So I'm holding on the face. And remember, you can change the type of components by flicking with your thumbstick. So if you, for example, you can see it changing on your controller there. If I want to do the faces, you have to be in the correct mode. So flick through until the face highlights. Then grab it with the grip, and then just fire, and that gives you, each time you fire, it's an edge loop. So that's a great way to add geometry. You could delete that and have an open one. We could add some edge loops now, but I wouldn't add edge loops yet. What I might do is say, right, I want to change that a little bit. So remember the tools we used earlier. So you might want to hold the black button, and you might want to move, let's just find the right one. Maybe this one. Just moving the vert so I can talk to you about it. I've got that edge loop there on the end, right, really close to the other one, so that's why it wasn't particularly easy for me to use it. So we've got that one separated. I'm going to take this one by hovering over the black button and now holding the grip. Now I can just turn that loop, and that's the loop I was explaining to you earlier on. By using my grips as well, by holding them, you can expand that and contract to make it bigger and smaller. So that really helps for you to be able to change that. I could put another loop in there, hover over it again, black button, and then my grip, and again you can change the loop further down. So that combination there really helps. I've actually made a horrible ship there, so I think what I'll do is I'll probably take all of that, make sure I'm in face mode, and I'll just delete it back to here, so it's not the horrible shit that I'd created. Let's take this one, black button, and we'll just expand that now, and we'll just bring this round, and what we can do is we can just cap that off. So we'll just take the edge, extrude, and we'll snap them together like so. And now we can bring them together, and this is where you can see it looks quite blocky here, and our subdivision level is only at level 1, so we can go up a level and you might get a smoother. So if you wanted this to be like a wing, if you didn't want it to be rounded here, this is exactly where subdivision modeling comes in. So what you would do is you would add loops. So I'm going to add a loop on the end, and it gives us that. So if we now want to move all of those points as a set or individually, you can then, in fact I'll bring them all together, you'll see what I mean. We'll tighten that down. Now if that's not tight enough, or if you want to, if you want to go a little bit more in terms of making the edge more harder, or a hard edge, then you either crease it, which we've shown, or you just keep adding more loops around this way, like so. If we want to continue adding at this end, we may need to add loops here and here, and then if I want to just come up with this and make this into another fin, you can see it's completely changed the shape of the dynamics at the back of the ship. And this is why I love Gravity Sketch, because it's very much like much more like a sculptural program here. It's behaving much more like you would see in something like ZBrush or Oculus Medium, or Adobe Medium as it's now known. And it gives us that nice fluid organic look. And it's obviously that, subdivision modeling has been around for quite some time, but it's really utilizing that organic the flexibility of having a model that can go all the way back down to just being a basic polygonal model, and the ability to see it smooth and at that kind of level. So that's the basics of polygonal modeling. What you might want to try is do it with a face. Try and do something more organic. Have a look at our video on character creation in Gravity Sketch, which is very different than something like this with ships. But the core fundamentals are exactly the same. These are the utter basics of how to do subdivision modeling. If you're enjoying this kind of content, then please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. We're still uploading every Wednesday and every Friday, and there's plenty of videos now in the iPad series and the iPad sculpting series and the VR creation tools, and we're adding more every single week. So follow along and make sure you hit that notification bell so we can let you know when the next videos are uploaded. To start making something like this spaceship, you're going to need to know how to use subdivision modeling tools. So this video has covered off the basics of it. Over the next few weeks we'll add more videos of how to create sci-fi vehicles and how to use Gravity Sketch with hard surfaces in mind. So much more of these harder edged corners and much more mechanical surfaces and parts and components that are suitable for kind of sci-fi builds like this.